Hello, my name is Daniel Hughley, and I'd like to welcome you to my presentation on language maintenance. The table of content. Today we're going to first look at what language maintenance is and add a few examples. We'll talk about why it's important. Then we'll see what factors you need to maintain a language, and then a few of my own thoughts on how the different factors that set together language maintenance influence each other, and that therefore you should invest in them equally. And in the end, in the attachment, the works I cited will be visible. What is language maintenance? Language maintenance is when a language is continued to be used in competition of another language. So the two languages live alongside each other. There are different examples for such a situation. Well, one example could be a migrant community in a big city, for instance, Chinatown in New York. A few more examples where language maintenance is required are Wales and Australia. So in Wales, the most spoken language used to be Welsh, but English has taken over, and language shift has occurred. So more people now speak English than Welsh, and Welsh needs to be maintained alongside English. And also in Australia, which has many indigenous languages, the dots in Australia symbolize languages in the picture. And because English is dominant now in Australia, and the language shifts, these indigenous languages over time die out. So now we've seen a few examples where languages need to be maintained. And now we're going to talk about why bother? Why should we maintain them anyways? Thiefberger has a text where he talks, where he has 7 arguments for language maintenance, and we're going to look at the few most important. So the first point would be to see a language as a natural resource and treasure, and the whole country can benefit from this, from different languages, because they give a unique perception of the world. And languages lay a political and cultural foundation for a country, and only through maintaining a language you can profit from it. Another important argument is point 3, identity. Language is essential for group identity, and once a group loses its language, a cultural group, then within a few generations you probably can't distinguish them from the rest of the society. And also for the individual person, a language is important for their identity. For example, imagine your mother tongue being a minority language and not being maintained, and not being worth something that is very hard for an individual. Another important argument, the last one we're going to look at, is the diversity of the languages. The different languages, they might contain important information, such as philosophies or scientific metaphors, and knowledge about the natural environment. So there could be, for instance, botanical knowledge that is important for medicine. The different factors that help maintain a language are attitude, demographics, institutional political support, and domains. And in the next few slides, we're going to look at examples in what make these factors. So what is attitude made of? We have the little shirt beside attitude saying proud to be Polish and Canadian. So how do you get people to have a positive attitude, for them to want to identify themselves with the language? Well, positive attitude or negative is made up of two things, as two dimensions, which are status and solidarity. So solidarity being feeling appreciated and belonging, so belonging to a group, and wanting and identifying oneself with this group through the language. And status would have to do with power, and you connect to this language. So power and economic opportunity and upward social mobility. And if these two things are there, you have a positive attitude. So demographic factors that help maintain a language are if the speakers of the minority language are a large enough group and are somewhat isolated from the majority language. So for instance, as we had already, Chinatown in a big city. What also helps is contact to the motherland and people there, like relatives. So frequent visits are good for maintaining the language, and also social media can help. So FaceTiming and Skype and etc. to stay in contact with the motherland. What also helps maintain a language are the more domains the language is spoken in, the better. So to simply explain, domains are places where in the language is used. For instance, you can have private and public domains. So private domain would be at home and in the family, or public domains could be with your peers in school. Another example for a domain could be in a club or maybe in church. Institutional support also helps maintain the language. So for instance, is the language taught in school, or is it present in media? Is there a radio station? Are there any songs in church in this language? Can you fill out your taxes in this language? Or can you go to court and speak this language? So these are the factors that help maintain a language. And imagine language maintenance being a body, and these factors are the vitamins that keep it healthy, and you need all of them, and maybe not in the same amount, but you need all of it. And these factors, they also influence each other, and that is what I'm going to try and point out in one example. We're going to look at how institutional support and attitude influence each other. If a language receives more institutional support, so let's say you can use your language to fill out your taxes, or you can use it in school, then you will have a more positive attitude toward it because you have more advantages. On the same time, if you have a lot of institutional support, yet the attitude is negative concerning solidarity, so people just don't identify themselves with it and aren't proud of it at all, this will leave the institutional support ineffective. To show how institutional support influences attitude, we will look at Taiwan as an example. Taiwan is the island on the right you can see in the picture. On the left side you see a part of mainland China. In Taiwan there's a language called Taiwanese Hokkien, and it's a form of Chinese, and a strong characteristic of it is that it has more tones than Mandarin. Our example is in the past, so we're going to go back in history to year 1895, where Taiwan became a Japanese colony, and in this time Japanese was the language of education. So from now on, the Taiwanese language, its status decreases because it's not a language of education, and you don't have any economic opportunity if you speak Taiwanese well. You'll need to speak Japanese well if you want to get a better job than the others. So overall, the attitude towards Taiwanese is less positive. Though Taiwanese may still experience much solidarity among the people, its status has decreased, and therefore also the attitude. This can be seen through the number of Hokkien speakers decreasing because of the lack of institutional support. Well, an example to show that attitude influences institutional support will be Wales. In Wales, Welsh receives a lot of institutional support, but people don't identify themselves with the language, and the support is ineffective. So the institutional support lacks the attitude, the positive attitude of the speakers, and therefore is ineffective, which shows the factors for language maintenance influence each other. In summary, we saw that language maintenance is important to fight against language death. Language death is bad because a unique perspective of the world is lost and the cultural foundation of a country is lost too. Furthermore, individuals and groups use language to identify themselves. And finally, the language contains knowledge about the natural world. Factors for language maintenance are domains, demographics, attitude, and institutional support. These factors influence each other, so all of them must be taken in account when trying to maintain a language. Thanks for listening.